The story of the sun's march through the 12 houses of the zodiac. The zodiac began as a practical story rooted in the need for survival. To have enough food to last through the harsh winter months, farmers had to know the right times to plant and harvest. The tales of celestial animals emerged from this necessity and were originally understood as metaphors for natural cycles. Over time, these symbolic stories were misinterpreted as literal depictions of divine beings and began to be worshipped as gods. As Christianity spread, the early church absorbed and reinterpreted these pagan beliefs. The gods of the zodiac and their celestial dramas were gradually replaced with Christian narratives. Pagan festivals that once marked the sun's journey through the sky were transformed into Christian holidays. The spring equinox festival became Easter, where the Son of God was raised from the tomb. The autumn equinox was replaced by All Saints' Day, and the winter solstice celebration evolved into Christmas, honoring the birth of Christ. To the ancients of the Near and Middle East, the sun told a story as it moved across the sky. The sun came up every day beyond the eastern rim of the world and traveled across the sky, always south of, but sometimes nearer and sometimes further from the point overhead, and then sunk below the world's western rim. With the setting of the sun came darkness, then another body appeared in the heavens, as if traveling behind the sun at a greater or lesser distance. Traveled across the sky, the moon, sometimes as a thin crescent then increasing to a full disk resplendent with silver light, sometime more or less southward of the point overhead. People enveloped by the profound darkness of night, when everything around them has disappeared and they seems alone with the black shades around. They feel the emptiness and fear the shadows. In the darkness of night, everything appears dead. How crushing it would be to think the sun might not return. Light can restore life back into the world. Naturally, primitive people considered light as the principle of their existence, without which life would be one continuous weariness and despair. This necessity for light and the creative energy was felt by all people, and nothing more alarming than its absence. The first rays of light in the morning beckon the return of life. Light was Ormuzd of the Persians, darkness Aruman or evil. Light is the substance of the soul and origin of the universe. The ancients perceived the heavens to be a dome encircling a flat earth. The sun, moon, and stars traveled across firmament of this dome. The moon was softer light, and stars and planets like pinpricks of light guided by supernatural influences. The moon also had a regular cycle, the same number of days elapsing between crescent in the west at evening and her full orb at the same hour. At regular intervals, the days and nights were equal, the vernal and autumnal equinoxes. The spring or vernal equinox indicated the return of the strength of the sun and the time for sowing seeds in preparation for the summer harvest. The equinox, around March 25th in the northern hemisphere, brought with it the rains, soft winds, and the return of warmth. This period was adopted by the Christian Church as Easter and the death and resurrection of Jesus, the bull and the ram. The animals recovered their vigor and vegetation budded, the seeds germinated, and the grass grew. In the summer solstice, when the sun reached the extreme northern limit, came burning heat and winds. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, the vegetation withered under the hot sun, and people longed for the cooler weather. With the autumnal equinox came fruits and harvest, cold evenings and falling leaves. The principles and power of darkness prevailing over the light drove the sun further to the south, and the nights grew longer than the days. At the winter equinox, the trees are covered in frost, and the sun reaching the most southern point stays for 3 days in the tomb of the south, leaving the world in darkness and despair. Then the sun turns and returns towards the north, bringing life back to the world. Time was divided first into days, then moons or months, and then into years, and with these divisions and movements were connected cycles of life, regeneration, and death. The story of the sun's journey is agricultural, and well-being is at the mercy of the seasons. Prosperity depended on the two great luminaries of the heavens. Then it was noticed that the smaller lights of the heavens were regular and foretold with their rising and falling the recurrent cycles of which well-being depended. Groups or stars were given name. In the circle of the year, the periodic productions of the currents of the earth were not only associated with the greater lights, but also on the rising and settings of constellations of stars and their position relative to the sun. The mind connected the terrestrial and celestial objects that were connected and gave them names. Thus, the Ethiopians and Egyptians give the stars a name for when the Nile overflowed, stars of poured-out water, Aquarius. Those stars where the sun was when it had reached the northern extreme and returned were termed the crab, or Cancer. Autumn, or the middle point between the extremes of summer and winter, and those stars were called stars of the balance, Libra. Those stars when the sun was and the lions came from the desert in search of water was called Leo. The stars that appear at the point the sun rises during the harvest were called stars of the Virgin holding a sheath of wheat, or Virgo. The stars behind the sun when the ewes were giving birth in February were called the stars of the Lamb, or Aries. Those in March when it was time to plow were called those of the ox, or Taurus. Those of when the hot and venomous winds came from the desert were called stars of the Scorpion, or Scorpio. The return of the waters of the Nile was accompanied by a beautiful star that seemed to come from the direction of the source of that river. The star seemed to give warning of the return of the flooding of the Nile, like a barking dog warning danger, was called the dog star Sirius. Imaginary animals were assigned to groups of stars. This belt of stars encircled the earth was called the zodiac, or abode of the sky animals, and was divided into 12 signs. The sky animal that appears at the vernal equinox is seen to progress retrograde through the zodiac, slowly over a vast expanse of time. Each sign will appear for a period of 2,150 years. During the time of the early Hebrew patriarch Abraham, the sun appeared in the constellation of the bull, hence, was known as the Age of Taurus. Moses in 2150 BC ushered in the Age of Aries and told people no longer to worship the bull, but now the ram was to be venerated. The birth of Christ ushered in the Age of Pisces, symbolized by the fish. The sun passing through the constellation of the cold time of the year, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius, finally emerges into Aries the ram, and when the sun moved into Taurus, the people rejoiced that the days were getting longer and warmer. At the end of summer, the sun is stung by Scorpio the scorpion and is further wounded by the archer Sagittarius, to be delivered to the grave in the sky at the lowest point of the ill-tempered goat Capricorn that slays and buries the sun. The sun will remain in the grave for 3 days as the sun stops in its plunge southward before starting a long march northward back towards the equator in the months of Aquarius and Pisces, and then the whole story starts again with the arrival of the ram. The 3 months of winter became emblematic of sin, death, and suffering. The 3 months of spring became emblematic of renewed hope and happiness. The sun in Egypt was personified and worshipped as Osiris, who was slain and raised again. The moon became Isis and personified by winter. The evil principle in Egyptian mythology was Set, who took away the sun at sunset. In Greece, the evil principle was Typhon, a sea monster who dragged the sun into the Mediterranean as it descended southward. The Greek legends of the 12 labors of Hercules describes the sun's journey through the zodiac. The evolution of the constellations of the zodiac. Hindu mythology has the bull in the new year as the bringing forth of the sun in the sign of Taurus, breaking with his horns the egg from which the world was born. Hence the cow was sacred to the Hindus. The bull was worshipped by the Egyptians and represented as the golden calf. Giant winged bull statues in Persia pertain to the constellations of Taurus and Leo. The Temple of Solomon was said to be adorned by 12 bronze bull statues representing the 12 signs of the zodiac. Another name for Scorpio is the constellation Aquila, meaning Agali, was substituted for scorpion. Thus, the 4 seasons of the year were signified by the bull, the lion, the eagle, and Aquarius the man. These seasons in Hebrew traditions as the tribes of Ephraim, Judah, Reuben, and Dan. The ram or lamb was worshipped because he opened the equinox, bringing forth the sun from the tomb of the evil Set, or Typhon, delivering the world from winter. The central theme of death and resurrection was elaborated with mythology concerning the constellations. The ancients noted a soft silvery star that following the sun on rising and setting, another of an angry or red color, and others of more noble presence among the fixtures of heaven. These stars were Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mercury. The ancients divided the heavens into diametrically opposite sides, dividing the year into the sun above and below the ecliptic. In summary, astrology evolved from practical observations of celestial bodies to associating them with deities. Initially used to determine agricultural cycles, these celestial entities became worshipped as gods in numerous religions, including Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Mithraism, Zoroastrianism, and ancient Babylonian and Sumerian traditions. In the process of replacing the allegory of an agricultural story with the worship of sky gods, the original meaning has been lost. As an example, the Christian Lamb of God was worshipped because he opened the equinox, bringing forth the sun from winter in the tomb of the southern hemisphere. And as such, in the early centuries after Christ, Christianity had been overlaid with regurgitated astro-theology plagiarized from earlier sky god religions.